For this project, I'll be taking apart this desktop computer. This is not actually a name brand computer. This is a personalized computer that my brother built for me several years back. To begin, we have the case. I will be taking the side of the case off, which will allow me to see the internal components of the computer. And then I will start pulling apart the pieces of the computer. The first piece that I have right here is the power supply. The power supply works on allowing the computer to receive the power from the outside source, which would be your wall outlet. I would remove the power source by unplugging it here. And also by unplugging it here. And from the DVD-ROM. Also from the hard drive. So now we have the power supply right here. Like I said, the power supply would allow it to receive the power from the outlets. If we go next, I'm going to take out the hard drive. The hard drive is located right here towards the front of the tower. I will slide out the hard drive through the back. And I will take it and I will unplug it from here, from this location. This is the hard drive. The hard drive is used to store data. This hard drive would use the spinning disc and record all the material onto the magnetic disc. Next, I will take out the DVD drive. Alright, so to remove the DVD drive, I'm going to take out the front of the case right here, and I will need to disconnect it, disconnect the power cord. From the motherboard. And then this will pull off. And that just opens up the front of the case. And I'll slide out the DVD drive through the front. The DVD drive, this is a DVD burner, so it'll allow me to read and also write DVDs. Next, we're going to pull out the one of the fans on the computer. This fan was built into the tower, but in order to better access the motherboard, I'm going to pull it out. Again, I'm going to disconnect the fan from the motherboard. The fan, the purpose of this fan is to keep the inside of the tower cool. Now I'm going to access the motherboard. Alright, so I have the motherboard now out. We actually have several components to the motherboard. Here we have the heat sink fan. The heat sink fan, the purpose of it is to keep the motherboard cool so that way it will not overheat. Because the motherboard is constantly working, we want to make sure that it stays cool enough to where it will properly function and not overheat. Here we have an example of the random access memory. There are three different pieces for the random access memory. Another piece of the random access memory. And the final piece of the random access memory. The random access memory, or RAM, is where most of the software is stored in order to perform the basic functions of the computer. So along with the motherboard, we have the CPU, which is located right here, the central processing unit. The CPU is kind of like the brain of the computer. The CPU will handle all the functions. Everything will go into the CPU and then it will direct it back out, telling it exactly where it needs to go and what function it needs to perform. Attached to the motherboard is also the graphics card right here. So this is the graphics card. The graphics card is what allows you to see what is on the what is being displayed. The graphics card would have the ports on the back of it, which would connect to the desktop monitor. On this graphics card, it also has its own heatsink fan built into it to allow it to stay cool, because it is a main piece of hardware that is always functioning. So it needs to remain cool at all times. The RAM that is in the computer is actually a 526 megabyte RAM, and there are 3 of them located in this computer. This will allow the computer, like I said, to perform the basic functions required, where most of the main software or programs will be installed on the computer. Now I've removed all of the parts to the desktop computer. You can see that all we have left is a shell. This is the case or the tower to the computer. And inside the case or the tower is where all of the main components will be stored, which will allow the computer to function. Now, we will be assembling the computer back together. What we will do is we will take the motherboard, we will reinsert the RAM. To do that, we place the RAM in here, we press the locks back down. It's very important that your RAM is turned the correct way. Based on the size, this side is slightly longer than this side, so it will fit into the slots a certain direction only. So it's very important to make sure that you're reinstalling it the correct way. So the RAM has been reinstalled into the motherboard. We would take the Before reinstalling the motherboard, I'm going to reattach the graphics card, just because that was the way I pulled it out. It's in a very tight location, so I think that would be the easiest way to get it back in there. So I'm going to reattach it to the motherboard, and then I heard a click. That click lets me know that it is fully attached to the motherboard. And then I will take this So I have the motherboard reattached into the computer now. Now what I'm going to do is add back the fan that I took out earlier, this fan right here. So I've just reinstalled the fan, and now I will connect the fan to the motherboard. The next thing I'm going to install is the hard drive. So I will slide the hard drive into the cradle of the case. Line up my screws. Now I'm going to reconnect the hard drive to the motherboard. So now it's reconnected. Next thing we're going to install is the DVD drive, which will slide in through the front, through this space. And then we will screw that in. Now we'll connect the DVD drive to the motherboard. It's connected there to the back of the DVD drive, and now we will connect it to the motherboard. So now we have the DVD drive connected to the motherboard. The final piece that I have is the actual power supply, which we will place into the back of the tower. And we will screw this in. Alright, so I'm going to connect the power supply to the motherboard here. I'm going to make sure we have the cord turned the correct way, and that will plug into there. I'm going to plug the power supply into the DVD drive, which will plug in up here. I will plug the power supply into the back of the hard drive. We have one more cord from the power supply that will need to be plugged in down here. So now we have reconnected the power supply. The next step that we'll do is we will attach the front of the case. The front of the case also has wires that we will need to make sure we reconnect. So once we have the cords through, we're going to pull them taut and snap back on the front of the case. And then we will attach these cords right here, we will reattach them. And so we're going to take these cords and we're going to connect them to the motherboard here at the base of it. They have to be turned correctly because of the way the prongs are set up. So now we've reinstalled all the components of the desktop PC. So again, you can see that we have the power supply in it. You can see that this is the motherboard in this area, along with the heatsink fan on it. We have the video graphics card right here. In this area we have the DVD drive, and then down here we have the hard drive. Also on the motherboard would be the CPU, the central processing unit, and behind the wires you would see the RAM that is installed in it. The only thing we have left to do now is to reattach our sides to our case. So we will take our sides, we will slide that on. We will take this side, and we will slide this on. Then we reattach the screws that go with it. And at this point we have successfully reattached all internal components of the PC. Here we have all the internal compartments of the desktop PC that were removed, and we will take a closer look at each one. Then we have the sides to the tower. We also have the front to the tower, and then we have the empty tower. Here we have our DVD drive, which is also a DVD burner. This will allow me to read and also write DVDs and CDs. This is the fan that I took out of the tower. The purpose of the fan is to keep all internal parts of the computer cool. This here is the video graphics card, which allows the video from the tower to be displayed onto the monitor of the PC. Here we have the hard drive of the computer. The purpose of the hard drive is to store data that you would like to save on the computer. The hard drive is a set of disks that spin, and the data is magnetically stored onto these. This is the motherboard. There's several key components to the motherboard. The motherboard is the main part of the computer as far as performing functions. Then we have the CPU, which is located right here. The CPU, the purpose of that is all actions for the computer will be pushed into and out of the CPU. It's basically like the nervous system of the CPU, where everything has to be functioned from there. Just above the CPU, or the central processing unit, we have the heatsink fan. The heatsink fan, the purpose of it is to keep the motherboard cool while it runs. Since the motherboard and the CPU are constantly running, since they perform main functions of the computer, they have to remain cool at all times so they do not overheat. This here is the power supply to the computer. The power supply, what its purpose is it will take the power from the outlet of your home and push it into the CPU. These are the 3 pieces of RAM, or random access memory, that were removed from the computer. These 3 pieces of RAM, each one stores 526 megabytes.